Hello, everyone. That was waking up. Thank you very much for being here. Lovely to see so many of you, especially at siesta time. So, my name is Nadia Metwi. I'm the chair of Genders, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Working Group of the MCAA. Whoa, Carlo. It's my pleasure to present this panel today, composed by Magda Theodoridou, who is my vice chair of, former chair, sorry, of the Genders, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Working Group. And as I like to think of her, my mentor. So I will give the floor to Magda, who will be moderating this panel. Thank you very much for coming again. We'll try to also make the session a little bit interactive, so we might ask you some questions and get some of your input and feedback. Enjoy the session.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Magda. Thank you, Nandi, for the introduction. And today's session is focusing on how we can balance family and career, especially within the MSCA framework. And of course, we would like to go beyond that and use that program, which has very strong points in that dimension, as a model for other funding schemes. So what we are trying to do, I mean, we start from MSCA because there is the mobility aspect, which makes everything. It's an extra challenge for all of us who are having family or consider themselves as individuals that would like to think of it in the future or during their fellowships. So there is an extra burden there, which is, of course, like moving to another country, relocating, not being familiar with the language or the bureaucracy or legislation, or and also the lack of support from your background, I mean, family back home, etc. So. And when we speak about family, we would like to highlight that we are giving the broader definition here. So just as an example, the Van Year Institute's definition speaks about family as it consists of any combination of two or more people bound together over time by ties of mutual consent and or birth, adoption or placement, and who take responsibility for various activities of daily living, including love. So this is something that we always keep in mind because we want to make our action as inclusive as possible. And the aim of today's session is to kick off a series of events so that we can record and report on the conditions that individuals face in their host country and host institution, and to see how we can come up with an enhanced rule book or guidelines to the participating countries and institutions in order to make family and career balance better for all. So I would like to present our speakers. We are very happy today to have Senem Sanal-Erginel is a policy officer at the unit in charge of the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions at the European Commission. She is responsible for the coordination of relations with the Marie Curie Alumni Association. And previously, she was in academia focusing on teacher education, parental involvement in education, and right to education among disadvantaged groups. Senem, I think you can start with your speech and presentation, and then I will present the other speakers. And just to let you know, we are here and we want to hear your opinions and suggestions, not only on the topic, but also on the strategy that we are willing to to create in order to achieve our goal. So if you have any ideas, please don't hesitate to share them with us.
Yes, thank you so much. I have two microphones, so I will take this one so that you can intervene whenever you like. Well, let me tell you that I'm very honored to be here. Thank you very much, Magda, Nadia, thank you very much. Hello to everyone. Dear fellows, dear alumni, I'm very happy to be here. I've recently taken over this post as policy officer, responsible for Marie Curie Alumni Association in Brussels from the Commission side. I'm not new to the Commission, but I am new to the file. However, I'm not new to your situation because I'm also a researcher. I recently completed my sabbatical leave from my policy work in the Commission. And so I know the field. I've been a researcher for many years and an academic. So I believe and I hope that I can contribute positively to the alumni, to the work of the alumni, and so that we could collaborate and do good work for the alumni and for research community. Now, this topic of balancing family and career is close to my heart as a woman's researcher, as a mother, and who struggled a lot in my life, previous life and current life, I must say, and that has been an issue always for me. So thank you for inviting me to talk about this topic. And I'm going to present you some data from the Commission based on our analysis, and I was asked to focus on the challenges of the previous framework program and what has happened in the current framework program. So I will do that, but I'm very interested in the experiences, in your experience. So I will try to be as brief as possible and leave floor to you, because we are interested in your experiences. You are there, and we have open ears, and we want to hear what you go through, what you have to say, your experiences. So let me start by saying that gender equality is central to the European Commission's agenda and a core European value. Ensuring gender equality, diversity, and achieving family-career balance do not only benefit businesses and research and innovation performance, but it is also a matter of justice. Over the past decades, we have made progress. The share of doctoral graduates in the EU is almost gender balanced, with women representing around 48% of all PhD graduates. However, women are still represented in higher academic and decision-making positions, occupying only 26% of top academic positions when all fields are considered. There are still disparities in certain fields of study. For example, in information and communication technologies, only 22.4% of doctoral graduates are women. Now, let me just, based on the data or our evaluations coming also from MCAA surveys, what has happened in terms of gender and MSCA in Horizon 2020. Now, we see that MSCA was, at that time, supporting a growing number of women into research and innovation. When we look at the years, 44% of fellows, 42% of short-term staff, 46% of doctoral candidates, and especially when we compare it to the FP7, which was the program preceding, it was 37%. We see a growing number of women participating. As a mobility program, mobility-based program, the MSCA actions have also some particularities. A recent study showed that overall MSCA is well placed as a mobility-based program supporting female researchers. Now, of course, as you can imagine, I am using the official data and I'm following the official narration. Now, so these are the findings that I have been talking about based on data. Now, let's have a look at the mobility determinants. We see that individual level determinants of mobility can be broadly understood to fall under two main categories. Either the determinants are career and work related, or they are related to personal reasons. From a career and work perspective, the drivers of mobility relate to increasing one's research capacities and career advancement possibilities. Now, of course, this data is based on the previous framework program. And when we look at the personal reasons, we see that personal reasons also contribute to decisions to become or not to become internationally mobile. Gender, age, family reasons also contributed to mobility decisions. And they were also regarded to be significant barriers. Now, in order to go a little bit faster, to talk about what we have done, you can find all this data in our publications. I would like to say a few more words about feedback based on our recent publication on surveys data on Horizon 2020 evaluations of MSCA fellows' mobility. Now, levels of mobility among female researchers decline at doctoral and postdoctoral stages. This is especially true if the female researcher's partner is also employed in scientific research. Another one, having children has also been found to harm mobility. The older and more experienced a researcher is, the less likely they are to be internationally mobile. Another one of the main reasons for MSCA fellows to leave academia and move to industry was to be reported to be that academia was too demanding, especially for female researchers who struggle to combine work and family. There was lack of standard implementation vis-à-vis family commitments that also impacted mobility. Also, family child support from host organizations was another challenge. Now, these were the feedback we received from the alumni. Now, let's have a look at the Horizon Europe. This framework program, as you all know, started in 2021 and it's going to continue until 2027. Now, what differences, what new, let's say, what changes we have in this Horizon Europe program for MSCA that supports gender diversity and supports family work balance? Now, we have here, the MSCA really paid great importance to gender mainstreaming at all levels. The program ensures gender balance in its selection panels and provides training on implicit gender biases in the evaluation and selection process. In addition, the MSCA includes the gender dimension as a keyword criterion in its evaluation process. By doing so, they promote gender balance in research and research management teams and full consideration of gender dimension in research and innovation content. Moreover, gender is considered as a key aspect when selecting the MSCA doctoral and postdoctoral programs that will train the innovators and researchers, research leaders for future. Now, I would like to go to my slide 11 to say that the MSCA require transparent recruitment and high quality employment and working conditions for researchers in line with the European Charter for Researchers and the Code of Conduct for Recruitment of Researchers. Now, one important improvement I would like to underline here is the gender equality plan. Now, with Horizon Europe, the current framework program, we support a gender equal culture within research and innovation organizations. As of 2022, public bodies, research organizations, and higher education institutions established in any EU member states or associated country need to have in place a gender equality plan to be eligible to apply. Gender equality plans have been proven to be one of the most transformative tools to achieve long-term sustainable advancement towards gender equality in research and innovation. Here there are mandatory requirements which include the following: public document, dedicated resources, evidence-based. They should be evidence-based data that supports this plan, and training and capacity building within the organization. And there are also, this plan also includes recommendations to the host organization on work-life balance, gender balance in leadership, gender equality in recruitment, integration of gender dimension in research and teaching, and measurement against gender-biased violence within the organization. And like I said, it should be evidence-based and documented. And another improvement we have here, the following: the measures promoting equal opportunities. Well, first of all, there's a broader definition of family to ensure full access to the allowances, and broader definition of family, and including LGBTI plus couples and families, new family allowances accessible to all families, and new, even if their parental status changes during the duration of the project. And there are maternity and parental leave possibilities, part-time work, conditions, long-term leave allowances, in case of the researcher's leave, including maternity, paternity, parental sick or special leave, and special needs allowances, exemptions for women regarding research experience caps. Now, what else? I want to cover everything in my slides. I don't want to go over my time limit, but yes, also promotion of female roles, role models, including the outstanding MSCA supervisor, coordinators, and fellows, and also outreach of actions, youngsters, children, particularly girls and women in research careers in STEM and STEM topics. We have European Researchers' Nights and Researchers at Schools that also contribute to these aims. Also, I would like to mention this and finish my presentation or my speech. Guidelines for supervision to support the well-being of researchers within MSCA. And, these guidelines encourage institutions and supervisors to safeguard the well-being of the researcher, inform the researcher about the available support systems, encourage the researcher to dedicate time to personal well-being and to maintain a healthy work-life balance. The guidelines also encourage the researchers themselves to commit to preserving a healthy work-life balance and personal well-being. Now, thank you very much for listening and for your attention. The floor is yours after my colleagues' speeches. Yes, I am here to listen to you and take it on board. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senem. We will move to the next speaker, member of our panel. It's Stefan Gauthier, assistant professor at Grenoble École de Management, and she's the vice chair of the Coast Action Researchers Mental Health Observatory and was the vice chair of the policy working group between 2020 and 2022. I would like to thank Stephanie for joining us last minute because one of our panel members unfortunately couldn't make it, so her response was immediate and positive, so thank you very much for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Indeed, I'm replacing Stefan Moll, but I will actually also make some of the points that he wanted to share with you. What I wanted to come back to was this notion, obviously, of the work-life balance, but try to bring a bit of the scientific evidence behind it. Yeah, you can't hear me. Maybe now it's better. What we have discovered on REMO, Researcher Mental Health Observatory, the cost action, is that if you actually have some caring responsibilities, I'm sorry, but you are like twice more at risk of having some form of mental health disorder than if you don't have any of those caring responsibilities. Now, what is a caring responsibility is a big question. And here I'm going to play the card of, I'm sorry, I'm not a mother yet, but people who actually have caring responsibilities don't necessarily have to have children. Having a partner is enough to having a caring responsibility. Having some parents that may need your help, or brothers or sisters, all of that actually counts and it can affect your well-being. Why when you're a researcher? Basically because you either, I think there's going to be several sides to that story, but you could imagine that you don't have the time to actually accomplish your caring duties in the way that you wanted to accomplish them, or you don't make the time. That's for those who think that, you know, time is there, but you don't manage. So we have a bit of a problem there. That's very important to actually understand why, because we also have research from management that shows to us that as soon as there is a conflict between your workload and your personal, let's say, life, what's going to happen is that you're going to be less motivated for your work and your performance is actually going to decrease. Therefore, the problem that, you know, Magda and Nadia were trying to put up here, I think for me is a very strong problem that we have. If we want our researchers to actually be happy and be productive, which is also why we finance them, you know, in the first place, we need to make sure that they have the possibility of somewhat accomplishing those caring responsibilities. Now, unfortunately, in lots of cases, we don't really put them into a situation where they can actually do that. It may be because, indeed, there is the mobility that can make things hard because our families are far away, so we need to find a way to cope with it, to get organized. I leave it up to you. I don't have solutions. I just have problems for the moment. That's a bit of the issue as well. It can be made more difficult also because of the fact that we don't have, on the MSCA program, any form of permanent contract as well, so you're also thinking about caring for yourself and at the same time caring for the others. And all of those things, they need some change in the research culture. It's also something that Karen mentioned this morning, in order to make sure that we feel that we have the autonomy, the liberty, but also the support in order to be able to carry out those caring responsibilities. And Stefan wanted to share with you something from the survey that was made within MSCA, or MCAA to be more clear, I'm going to look at the notes because I don't know the numbers so well. But what Stefan wanted to show is that indeed we should be thinking a lot about people who have those responsibilities, because if they're accomplished, we think, let's say, in a way that satisfies the people, it's going to actually increase their career success. So he saw in the survey that being married appears to be positively related to mental health and career success outcomes for both men and women. However, he also says that the effect size in the survey is very, very small. But some people, because they actually have the support of someone else, and probably because they can also show their humanity by supporting the other, seem to be thriving more personally and in their careers. So that's what we want to encourage. Now, having children is positively related to mental health outcomes, but only for men. I'll let you, draw conclusions for that. The mental health of women with and without children, though, does not appear to differ, okay? So that's actually an important one. So a woman with or without child may feel the same, but when she has a child, she actually has more risks of actually undergoing a negative, let's say, mental health situation, which of course goes with the notions of, the parental leave and all these things that you also were mentioning. And another point that he wanted to bring to our attention was that it appears that women spend more time looking for work after their MSCA project than men. Okay? But we don't have enough data, that's also what Stefan says, in order to be able to explain why this is this and whether this effect can be found in a bigger way, let's say on a bigger sample. But that's kind of raising also a lot of questions, which could also be questions related to how willing are we to actually move again? Because I think it's always a big question. And, if you've started to establish your life and your support system, how willing are you to actually move with that? If you found a partner, how willing is the partner to actually also follow you? Because there is also that in the caring responsibility. So we don't know too much. And that's also something that Stefan wanted to share. That we can see these things, but for the moment we don't have enough to conclude anything about the causality. And we did not control for effects of other third variables in those little insights that I gave to you, which is also something to say we need to continue to collect more data, and I think that was something that Magda also was thinking about, or the JEDI group in general. And we need to be a little bit maybe more vocal about our experiences and what we need in order to be able to actually carry out those caring responsibilities, or having, I don't really like the word work-life balance, but something like that. And I hope that in the discussion you can share with us the struggles that you've had and what you think could actually be helpful, not to make you, a scientist that just do the science and that's the end of it, but to actually enable you as a human being to flourish so you're even a better researcher at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I will move to the next speaker. Okay. Jaishree Subramanyam is an MSCA individual fellow working at Aarhus University in Denmark, where she uses multidisciplinary approaches to understand plant communication and cooperation patterns. And at the Marie Curie Alumni Association, she is chairing the policy working group in this period. Jaishree.
Hi, am I audible? No. I will take both. So, thank you so much, Magda, for that introduction. And I have to start by saying what an honor it is to be in this panel with all of you guys. I think we have heard very, very diverse perspectives, from policy level initiatives at the Commission to real human being problems of being in research and how that impacts us as human beings. And what Stephanie very nicely mentioned, and I actually wanted to start from there, was we as researchers often feel that we are alone, isolated, and on this one-track path to get that grant, to get that funding, to get that one paper, or any of those things. But we also realize, and from what Stephanie said, we also realize that we're all human beings at the end of the day, right? And there are things that affect us that go beyond our work. And I believe, and I think it's probably, I speak for a lot of us, that we kind of have this tendency to become complacent and comfortable. Even if there are things that affect us, we feel that maybe it's not the most priority for us because we have other priorities, which includes our work, our grants, and all of those things. And the problem here is the fact that, and I'm going to quote one of my favorite people on the planet, Jane Goodall. She actually said something very nice in a very different context, but she said, Only if we understand will we care. Only if we care shall we be saved. And that speaks to something. It speaks to the fact that we as researchers, and we are trained to think, to understand stuff about us, about nature. I mean, all of us here are trying to understand the world around us in our own different ways. But I feel like we also are very unique in the ability to understand stuff beyond our own research. And what Sanal was pointing towards, and what Stephanie also mentioned, was the fact that there has to be something more to being in academia. Like, there has to be something more to that. And I'm going to start by what Senem was actually starting by, talking about the policies that exist at the European Commission level. And the reason I'm going to focus on policies right now also because Magda mentioned that I chaired the Science Policy Working Group, and the quote from Jane Goodall sits very, very perfectly with what I also work, and in my career, I study the ability of organisms to be of help to each other, the ability to be coming together for something that is bigger than them. And that is for the benefit of the entire community, of the entire group. And I believe that MCAA is a very, very beautiful example of exactly that. And to come back to what Sanal was saying about, I'm going to read out from my notes because now I don't remember them, but I just want to start by talking about the European Charter for Researchers, what you mentioned. I actually did a little digging, and I figured out, I wrote down this point where there's a sentence in that charter which says, the aim of that charter is to provide conditions for both men and women to have that work-life balance. And that includes things like flexible working hours, part-time working hour, telework, sabbaticals, and financial and administrative provisions, which is very, very good. And then you also mentioned something about the code of conduct for the recruitment of researchers. And there again, it says something about, and this is quite nice, where they said something about, okay, there has to be transparent open research, open recruitment, yes, and it should be internationally comparable. So what this word means, at least to me, is that the recruitment policies should be kind of similar across borders. And then they also mentioned something about the fact that career breaks should not be penalized and instead should be valued. I believe they are very, very interesting, important points. And the fact, this just goes to show that at the commission level, there exist initiatives, policies that exist just to enable researchers for getting that work-life balance and getting to do the work that they want to do in a more sustainable way. And including not just at the commission level, they also have initiatives, including in the Mercury's actions, where the entire framework is built towards allowing researchers to be more sustainable in the sense of having those flexible working hours and all of those things like family-friendly working hours, career development opportunities, parental leaves, all of those things exist at the Mercury action level. But while there exists that European Commission level rule book, if I can call it that, it is actually, when it comes down to the implementation part of it, it's actually at the institutional level. And then, I mean, it's like there is the commission level, then there is that national level, and then there is institutional level, and you can actually go below at the group level where you're working. So the implementation strategies have to vary because you have to take into account a lot of factors that come into that implementation, including systemic, cultural, and I'm missing out like socioeconomic factors. A lot of factors come into play when you actually talk about implementation of it. And as somebody who's engaged in policy dialogue now, like with Senem and people like that, we understand that policy initiatives are very, very difficult to not only draft, but equally difficult, or maybe even more, to implement. But what I'm trying to call out here is the fact that we as researchers have and what Stephanie was also mentioning, the fact that we have to understand the regulations, at least to some level, in order to not only advance our own careers, but also to just understand the space to make the academic culture a little better for everybody else also. Because I feel like we as academics are working very selfishly towards that one benefit, towards that one goal. But I think there has to be that change that comes to really bring together that community aspect of it. And when I mentioned that the diversity of policies that exist at the national and in the institutional level, it is rightfully so. The implementation that happens at the policy maker level has to be integrated in that sense, yes. But I want to also mention here about the fact that the rule book of the commission is a rule book of the commission. But I don't think that researchers have the time, if I can call it that, to actually understand, and maybe like the policy briefs that are written are also maybe not of interest or of the, not understandable or accessible to a lot of researchers as well. Which brings me to the point that, okay, the way these policies are being communicated at the commission level, which is an amazing initiative, I'm not taking away from that, but maybe there is a bridge that needs to be, a gap that needs to be bridged, to really help understand researchers what those policies mean in the language that they understand, but in a way that really helps them to understand, okay, these are provisions that exist for me in a new country, especially if you're talking about mobility. I moved 3 countries, and I did not understand not only the language barriers and all of those things, but there are structures and frameworks that exist in each institution that I had no idea about. And that's, I'm not saying that that's the fault of an institution or a person, but it is a problem. It's a real problem that, and there is a lack of effort from both the sides to actually bridge this gap. And that's where I think the role of MCAA comes, because as you know that we are one of the most diverse set of people here. We are a community of 20,000 or more, if I'm not mistaken, individual members coming from, I don't know, more than 100 countries. And coming from extremely diverse backgrounds, coming from and going to extremely different countries to do their fellowships as well. I feel like that gives us a very unique opportunity to become that bridge, to actually become that bridge, because we have connections to the researchers. We are the voice. We aim to be the voice of researchers. We also have links with people like you, Senem. So I believe that that rule book that we are talking about at the commission level can actually also be, I'm not going to say amended, but maybe rewritten in a language that researchers also understand. But I think like me, and I'm just throwing it out there, that maybe MCAA can do something on those lines as well. And that document, if I can call it that, has to be something which is accessible to a lot of us, and the way it is communicated, like including like methods and channels that are used to communicate these things, has to be something that is done frequently, and it has to be done in including accessibility, like including disabled researchers and having access to making the point reach them as well. And also like visibility also means like having, I don't know, pamphlets or things like, I'm just being very naive about it, but visibility also means getting it out there that this exists for you. Like there are provisions that exist for you. You can make use of that. And I believe then again, I'm going to bring back that point about the fact that we are a community of people who are trying to understand the world around us, right, at the end of the day. So, I think we will all benefit a bit more if we all come together and become that community that talks about things. Because I don't know who said that in the morning. I think it was, I don't remember who said that in the morning, but somebody did mention a very good point. Like, if we don't speak, we will not be heard. So I think the responsibility also lies on us to talk about our needs. But before we do that, we have to understand stuff more. And that's why I feel like maybe that should be the way forward. And with that, I shall end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jaishree, and thank you everyone from the panel. It's very interesting indeed. It's something that it keeps evolving in my mind while I'm listening to your thoughts, and it's a random order what I'm commenting now, but I think what was mentioned about the implementation stage is really like the challenge, because yes, we are here and we will do our work to enhance, improve the guidelines to the institutions and participating countries, but again, then how easy it is to be implemented, to be part of the real life of researchers. And that's something that I'm not really, it's not clear in my mind at this stage how we can facilitate that, who we should involve to make this feasible. So this is something that I would really love to hear your opinions, and if you have any thoughts and if you have any knowledge on how to make it happen. I mean, I'm asking this to our panel members and also to the audience. And there is also a part about accessible information. I think this is also very important. And for example, it came into my mind now that how about instead of asking people to read all the eligibility criteria or whatever it is as a long document somewhere online on the Commission side, can we really communicate what we are trying to do here or the conditions in an easier way? Like, can we ask the Commission to create a frequently asked questions where things are simpler, maybe according to the country, and saying like, simple question, can I go for an MSCA fellowship according to my individual needs? And then some basic stuff about including family could be mentioned there, because I think most of us found ourselves in an unknown, completely unknown situation and with unknown conditions, and we were trying to find a way out when we were already in that situation. We couldn't be prepared. It's something that we listen to stories where people are already, like, for example, pregnant in a country and they find out that they cannot get maternity leave because they haven't spent 6 months in a country. Can you imagine? You have been awarded an MSCA fellowship because you are an excellent researcher, and then you go to a country, you move there, you're already there, you're pregnant, and then you realize that you cannot get maternity leave. I mean, that's basic rights that at least if we cannot correct and we cannot make sure that they are there for our researchers, at least make the information accessible. And I think that's a way, and it was part of our pre-session discussion, that highlighting the strong and weak points of each participating country, because it's probably difficult to do it for each institution, but at least for each country, then that is a motivation, I think, for the participating countries to improve their conditions. Because if it is very clear that, for example, in that X country, you cannot get parental leave because you just moved to the country, then it's a country to avoid in your application. And until they change that, they will have a reduced numbers of researchers. So, just a few thoughts. I mean, I wanted to mention something just to trigger the discussion. We shared the questionnaire with the fellows. Unfortunately, we did it very last minute, and it was an informal questionnaire, so it's not a survey. But we wanted to get some stories and experiences through that. So we had questions about how happy were you with the conditions related to family during your MSCA, of course. We are focusing on that period at institutional or country level. And because, unfortunately, we cannot show you the results, I would like to ask you and simplify the answer, which is black and white, and I'm sorry about that, but we cannot ask you now to mark it with between 1 and 5, but could you please raise your hands if you were happy with the conditions at your hosting country, hosting institution, when you were in that phase in your life? Relevant to family, balancing family and career. So, yeah, raise your hand if you were happy. Okay.
Is the question, were we happy at the time? Or
Yeah, at
are
the
we
time.
At the time, I think
Yeah.
it makes a big difference.
At
That's
the-
something I understood for myself after everything finished, how much I actually put everything as a pause for the Marie Curie stuff. And only after I actually, and I'm very thankful to the program, but only after it stopped, I actually started to get my life together. So of course at the time I was happy, but also because in your brain you limit yourself because you won't have the maternal leave and you won't have lots of stuff. So I think that's also a point to consider in terms of it's good if you
Yes.
were happy,
I
but in
second-
hindsight, are you still happy?
I second that, definitely, Stephanie. It was a little bit after my Marie Curie, actually. I was talking to a colleague and I surprised myself saying, luckily, I don't have a family.
Yeah.
And that was like, boom, point for me. To just think that, so indeed, maybe happiness is a bit complicated, but as a question, but I think we definitely should collect more data about it, try to understand. Also, happiness is a bit of a cultural, there is a cultural dimension to it. Some people are used to be happy with less than, but the idea was just having a feeling from the room where did you have questions, or was it very comfortable, or to be during that phase and struggling with maybe building family or understanding your options or your abilities. So I'm going to ask the opposite question. Who thought things could have been better when they were doing their Marie Curie and kind of thinking about starting a family and so on? I will start by myself. All right, there is a bit of shyness, a bit of equilibrium, but it was just waking us up and waking you.
So thank you, Nadia. I just wanted to, I'm reading now the numbers, and apparently at institutional level, the highest percentage gave 4, between 1 and 5. For 5 is for very happy, which is sufficient, or a good starting point, but there is another very, very low percentage of people being very happy. And I think we should increase that number. And also at country level, it drops a bit. So it's even lower. But the other question that we asked was how easy it was to access relevant information. And in that, we got 0% for very easy. Most of the answers were like giving a 3. So there's clearly room for improvement. A few things that I could mention based on the suggestions that we received or stories that were shared. I'm not going to read them, but of course I will just mention keywords based on the answers. There were questions, stories and suggestions about dual career support. So what do you do when you bring a family member, and how it can be supported by the country, or I don't know at which level, but there is need for support. There is always, usually there is also the language barrier. There should be some support. I know there are countries that are doing it, probably at institutional level, for example, Switzerland, but there are many other countries that do not invest on this. Then the status of family, that is very difficult because it is not being recognized equally from country to another. For example, there were stories of unmarried couples that faced real problems in countries that you couldn't even imagine if I mentioned them, because they couldn't even rent a place for their family because they needed to prove that there is a connection, and if there is not an official connection, then they needed to prove that their financial background is very strong so that they could allow them to rent a place in the first place. So how do we ensure that these basic things are provided by the hosting countries? And then tailored support, I think this is very important, and it comes to the Commission level. So there is a support for family, the family allowance, but it is very general at the moment, isn't it? Yeah, there is an improvement that the status can be updated during the fellowship, which was not the case in the previous framework. But still, it's the same amount if you are just married or you are with a partner with the situation of having 5 kids, for example. If you come from outside Europe, or if you come from the neighbor country, or if you, for example, have caring responsibilities for your sick father or brother, this is not recognized as family support. So, and then there is another level of support that is needed, and it has been mentioned several times. What do you do if you have, for example, a kid and you cannot travel for networking, communicating your research without paying from your own pocket for the ticket of your family members that you cannot live on their own? So you either disappear from these activities, or you have a big financial cost that is not supported by your funding scheme. So I think these are some very important points. Of course, we will try to gather more information on that in an official way. Childcare costs also. There are countries where this is like a big barrier. LGBTQ rights, I mean, there is a long list, but I will stop here. I just wanted to ask all of you if you have anything, and the panel members and the audience, any thoughts that will deal with, I mean, what is the next step? Because, for example, a way to move forward is to really plan a survey that will provide us with the information that we need in order to compose the new, updated, enhanced rule book. How do we include the implementation stage to that? But then, do you think the survey is enough, or would you prefer, as fellows or researchers, to have local events where you could share your opinions and discuss this and participate in this more actively? So that's a question that I have, and whoever is willing, I mean, please share it with us now, or if you don't feel that it's the right moment, just email us later or reach us. That's a question that I have about the actual plan, because I think this is very important, and I would like to leave the room while having some ideas on this.
Can I?
Yes.
I think it's very important to make the survey, but it would be very important to make like more in-depth interviews. And I think also like kind of support groups locally. I think that would be great. And I just wanted to tell that I think that these kind of very detailed stories that are kind of blind spots are very important, because I participated in an ITN during my PhD, and I am a single mother, and I had this huge problem with the traveling. That my traveling was covered, but not my child's travel, so it was a huge cost for me. And I think that these stories are very, very important to collect. On the other hand, I wanted to say that there are very good practices also out there. So I had the luck to be at the University of Deusto. They have a partnership with Biscaya Talent, and they have actually programs for partners and so on, to have them in their career. I didn't have a partner, but I know about this program, and I think it's very good, and they have also very good networking events to support people, because this is the other question, I think, that is very important, that if we move to another place, then we don't have our support network, and if we have children, for example, then it is more important, and it's more necessary to us to have that. And the last thing that, I know I have to be brief, but I think that there is one thing that I think is very important, that we are a group of people who have some kind of privileges compared to other people who move. And I think that it's very important to use this visibility to lobby for change. And it can be about maternity leave, but it can be also, for example, the transferability of skills between public schools. Like, if my child goes to one school in one country, then to another country, what happens to my child? So, sorry, I have
Yeah.
things to
Thank you for
Very good points. Thank you very much for your comments.
Hi, thank you very much. Well, just one thing, and I would like to tell her that I'm Vizcaya Talent, and I was the person, because I'm a Euraccess member, and nobody has mentioned Euraccess. I mean, it's from the European Commission, but in the case of the Basque Country here in Spain, we are a non-profit association. We are a member of Euraccess, and I created as a facilitator. We do not recruit researchers, but we support the different institutions who recruit researchers, and we organize meetings. We support them in all things, and we try to make them make you understand our peculiarities. I mean, because it's not the same policies in all the countries, not even in the same country. That's another point. Yeah. But in any case, I would like to add, because sometimes even the politicians or the institutions do not believe even in people like my figure, because I'm me myself for all the researchers in the Basque Country. So I cannot support them properly in all them, because sometimes it's more, fundings or other things. And as you have already mentioned, it is very important that if we cannot change the law, just to help you, to make you understand with your own words the situation you have, and not to feel alone. And well, I could talk more, but I know.
Well, thank you very much for mentioning Euraccess. Actually, we realized how important role the Euraccess network can play in that, especially for making information accessible to the people, but also I think most researchers are not aware of the support that they can get from the Euraccess network. So it's very important. Thank you for mentioning that. Next question.
Hello, thank you. My question, actually it's not a question really, something on the lines of what Jaishree mentioned about implementation. I want to talk about the action plans, so, measures to protect researchers for the schemes that already exist. Because so many times you see at group level, at PI level, especially when you're an international researcher, you're intimidated. Your visa depends on your contract, and you can't speak up, and there is nothing protecting you. Yes, you can go to the HR knows the PI, it's just all very convoluted. So as an individual in a foreign country, you feel like you're isolated, definitely. And then, of course, it's going to transcend into mental health issues, development, career development issues, the list goes on. Yeah. So, yes, we've got all these schemes and all, but how is it really making a difference in an individual researcher's life? And on the other hand, yes, we've talked about families and stuff, but even single researchers face a lot of discrimination. Oh, you don't have family, you don't have kids, you can work in the weekend, you can work longer.
I agree with that.
So, I've honestly, like as Jaishree mentioned, I worked in 4 different countries, and I've experienced that everywhere. And I come from India, so I should be kind of used to listening to all these discriminatory things. But no, it exists.
I know.
And it affects you, and it's like, okay, so you have to kind of bear the burden just because you're single, and maybe because you are single because of all these mobility visa issues that you've spent a decade hopping around continents, not being able to have any roots. So these are like big issues affecting individual researchers that we don't talk about, that we don't hear about, all because of precarity. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think maybe one of the ways would be to collect, of course, the stories, but maybe also the best practices, so we can try to also see what it means, the rules. Because, in a way, if we're saying, oh, but we're supposed to support family, what does it mean? How we have a problem with, can we pay for a child when the parent is a single parent? Maybe actually we could make some exceptions, but I agree with you, they would need to be made at the program level so that nobody can come and say, oh, but why are you annoying me that you need that because you don't want to go to talk to HR? And I think that's where maybe in terms of implementation, we have principles, but we don't have always the understanding of what these principles mean in reality. And maybe we could work all together, at least within the MCAA, to try to collect that a little.
Exactly. I think MCAA is the perfect place to do this.
I agree.
Yes, Murad.
Murat Güneş, I'm the chair of Bridging Science and Working Group, so I will share the same thoughts with you guys. I'm Turkish, so in Turkey I have a child, so I didn't have any issues because I knew everything. I knew that how to approach and all the information is necessary. But when I moved to France, the locals didn't know that the problem that I will be facing with. And they say, oh, the kindergarten you can go. Oh, but you cannot go because you had to sign up a year in advance. So what can I do now? We don't know, because they really don't know. Because they live their lives, but we are foreigners and they do not care about this. So when I moved to Spain, the Spain authorities sent a gift card for my kid after a year, a birthday gift, but they didn't send any information about the school and any other information. So what I did is that I went to the Axio, the agency of Spain, and to my institute, Access and NCP. And I informed them, and they prepared a guideline, so country guideline. So a foreign researcher come to a country, what can they do?
Yeah.
A single, as a parent, here are the schools, here are the informations, train tickets, museums, every information. So they prepared a full report based on this. So I think this would be a great initiative for each country to prepare a guideline for researchers, single or parents. That would be a great help for them to at least facilitate the problems.
Okay. Well, thank you, Murad. I think we should draw a line here. I'm really sorry for that. We started late, and I think the next session starts now, right? Is it? There is no break, right? But let me ask just our panel members if they want to say something very briefly about what they would take home, or what is like really like one-line things. From my side, I would like to mention something about the gender equality plan in the proposals. And there is a question from my side, how it is being evaluated, because I think there could be room for more special evaluation in this one. It's usually evaluated, I think, from the experts in the field, but not from the experts on that topic. So, yeah, Senem, could you please start?
Just very briefly, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. Well, I took note. I think I managed to take quick notes, but let me tell you that we have actions, we have initiatives. Who are implementing them? People, institutions. It takes time to change the mindset. We are aware of it. There is a lot of room for progress. We need your contribution. You are researchers. You are thinkers. You need to be more active to express what you are going through. MCAA is a great facilitator, is a great, let's say, body. Form your groups like this one. Express your opinions, attend events, be active, and do the surveys. Please, this is how we can hear your voice. We can hear your voice. We are open to hear your voices. This is how we adapt the programs. We are here for you. So reach us.
Yeah, I think what's super important is that we all recognize usually that we are very lucky to be Marie Curie Fellows, and I still think we are, but we should not hide the difficulties on the program behind the fact that we are lucky. So you need to make your voice heard. There's the MCAA survey. MCAA is also going to work together with REMO for another form of survey more related to mental health. But obviously there we will pay attention to who is from an MSCA program. Please answer to that too, just to be able to also get a sense to the Commission of what could be the specific difficulties that you have compared to all the other researchers that we're going to poll. And if anything, of course, come in contact. Thank you.
One more thing may I add. Also know your rights. When you get the fellowships, you need to also check your rights, the eligibilities you have, and everything, because accessibility of information, the knowledge about rights, awareness, these are important issues. Like you said earlier, you have your target. Yes, we've been there. You want to finish your projects, get your degree, PhD or postdoc, but you need to know your rights.
Exactly. I could not agree more, but it's okay. I have to finish.
Yeah, so, but you can say just a few words because I know they need to start the next session.
Hot topic. We are still here, and the
Jaishree.
audience there's a lot to do.
Just to quickly summarize exactly what's been told by both the other panel members, that we know that we are researchers, there is something that we need to do for our jobs, but we are also human beings. So remembering that there are policies and actions in place to help us and learning and making an effort to learn about stuff that is in place for us is our own responsibilities, and that's a good place to start. And to help and facilitate things, there are structures available, but I think if there is one take-home message I can give you all to take home today, it would be just start getting uncomfortable with reading stuff that goes beyond your literature. Just yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I was not the most comfortable giving this session because I was
Yeah.